from Kedusha and so on. There was the sin of the Eitz Hadas. It began with, what did it start with? Its beginning was that Adam Rishon looked at the place of Klippus. Through Adam Rishon looking at Klippus, there became an association, a connection between Klippus and Adam Rishon that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So he explains why the Adam Rishon Klal Sheish Metzias HaKlippus, that beforehand Adam Rishon was not even aware of the existence of Klippus. Like we mentioned earlier, the Klippus were under all the world. Through Adam Rishon looking at the place of Klippus, just the vision itself, Nasis Etzlei Shaychus and Klippus became by him a connection with the Klippus. How come? Why did that cause an association, a connection with Klippus? Since the person Adam Rishon is a pnimi, he's a person that internalizes things. Even things that are makif, affect an inner connection. Over there in Torah, he also speaks about that the Klippus' existence beforehand, before Adam Rishon knew it, it was in a way of makif. Even though the Eibishter knew about it, it was in a way of makif, and therefore it didn't affect Kedusha. But Adam Rishon, since he's a pnimi, anything, even a makivdik connection, like seeing or even knowing, but knowing in a makivdik way, since he's a pnimi, he gets a connection with it. But through Adam Rishon looking at the place of Klippus, so the fact that he saw it caused by him a level of excitement, a level of that he was now affected by it, that he was emotionally involved, and now he became like completely touched and emotionally in this place. That's what it means, that through the sin there became an intermingling of good and bad, which wasn't there beforehand. And now through the sin, it happened by Adam Rishon that he had intermingling of good and bad, similar like the Eitz Hadas has good and bad. The same thing had happened by him, that when he did the sin, so then he got intermingled good and bad as well. That by him there was an intermingling of both. That the person also had, through his looking at it, a mixture of good and bad. Since there became the intermingling of good and bad, so now the Klippus had the capability and strength to be able to oppose Kedusha. Well, how come? Before there became the intermingling of good and bad, like we said before, Klippus were then outside of the realm of Kedusha. And they had no matters of Kedusha in them. They had no energy, because since they didn't have the intermingling with Kedusha, so if they didn't have the intermingling with Kedusha, so they didn't have the power that Kedusha would have imparted in them. Through it becoming an intermingling of good and bad, since they have an association with Kedusha, top of page Yud. And now they have Chayis comes into them from Kedusha. Therefore, the results of it is Lachein Yeshlam Koyach Lenagid Lekdusha. Now they have also the power to oppose Kedusha, because now that they received energy from Kedusha, so the very energy of Kedusha itself allows them to be able to oppose Kedusha. So now going back to the situation concerning the avoid of a person that we said, by the avoid of a person, at the beginning there has to be the idea of the clippus of the peels, just like at the beginning there has to be the yeshus, so that a person should have the courage to serve the Eibush. But once he already had the courage, once he already had that, so when he's in the middle of avoida, it's like a peel that he has to throw away. In the middle of the food, the peels don't belong, the clippers don't belong. So he's saying, line 2 in page Yud, v'cheinu ba'avoida sotu, it's the avoida of a yid. When the ego is not just at the beginning of the avoida, when a person's ego now manifests and gets mixed in also in the middle of the avoida. Behind this means he has ego from the avoida itself. That's the idea of the mixture of good and bad, that the bad has chayes from the good, because his ego is based off of the good that he does. So the ego is being fed by his good, and in the spiritual terms, the klippa is being fed by the kedusha. So then the ego is very bad. Then if in other words, what the Rebbe comes out what he's saying over here, that I can have ego that's not fed by kedusha. That's not so terrible. If I have ego because I think I'm very handsome or very smart or very strong or very rich, that's not as bad as if my ego is coming from my avodah. And because if my ego is coming from my avodah, so then there's the true mixture of good and bad. There's kedusha giving chayes to klippa in a much more powerful way than if my ego was based on things of no consequence. Until he can come to a state and situation that he adds vitality and klippas temporarily, like it's brought down as far in Hilchos Talmud Torah. So writes Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Talmud Torah that if a person studies Torah while he's a Rasha, so then at the time that he's studying Torah, that Torah is adding chayes and klippas. Now he's not necessarily talking about the Rasha of Tanya, that he does one Aveda in thought, speech, and deed. But he's talking about a person that's really, seemingly, he's talking about someone that's a Rasha, the way it's in Shulchan Aruch, because this is brought down in Halacha. So he is bringing chayes into klippa, but Alter Rebbe says it's still worthwhile because at least he'll have the Torah, and when he does tshuva, which every yid will do tshuva, he will extract it from klippa. But the main point that the Rebbe is trying to bring out from this is that klippa nurses and gets their chayes from kedusha, and as soon we're going to say that's the reason why klippa puts in so much effort to get a yid to do avedas. Any questions before we go on to Oisei? Okay, we're holding line 11, Oisei, page Yud. Now getting back to the question that we initially asked at the beginning of the Maimer, we identified the idea based on the Medrash. We said the Chet Eitz Hadas is similar to someone that murders someone. And therefore, just like someone that murders someone, b'shoigeg, he goes into exile. Same thing, Adam Rishon, by Hashem's compassion, he didn't cause him death, but rather he sent him into exile, kicked him out of Gan Eden. So we wanted to know what is the spiritual connection between murder and the idea of Avedas. According to this, would be understood why the sin of the Eitz Hadas is the idea of murder. Through a sin becomes the intermingling of good and bad. That chayis comes down, that life force and vitality comes down from holiness into klippa. This determined in Chumash, in Parshas Noach, for murder is someone that spills the blood of a person and a person. And we explained earlier, what is the Dam HaAdam? What is the blood of a person? The Dam HaAdam Uchayis the Kedusha, it's vitality and life force of holiness. Just like blood is where our life resides in and our vitality comes from. The blood of a person is talking about the life force and vitality of the general chain order of descent. The Shorshui Moirakav, that its source and root is from the line of the light of the Kav that comes after the Tzimtzum. Jalzen Nemar, concerning the Oir HaKav that came after the Tzimtzum, it says, Va'ahun Nevi, we say this Erev Shabbos Paschal Yom, and that flow, Hu'ihu Kinishmasa Leguf, it is into the worlds like a soul is for the body, the Ihi Chaim Legufa, because the Kav is life for the bodies, meaning the Kalim and the Oilams. By day ached, but through the sin, we called it a neshama. When he's taking out the blood, he's taking out the neshama, he's taking out the light of the Kav. So he's pouring out the blood of the man of Kedusha, meaning he's pouring out that life force, that light, that godly life. And he draws down the life of Kedusha in the place of Klippus. Like was explained previously in the inner meaning of Noikiv Shem Havaya, from the word Nekev, from the word puncture. He makes a puncture in Shem Yud Kevav. The Mishachato Pogim Behevers Haderech Havaya, someone that sinned and made a blemish and crossed the road or passed over the road the way of Hashem. Heaven forbid makes a puncture in the name Yud Kei Vav Kish. Mamshechayis Baklippus, he draws down life force into Klippus. That's the reason that the Yetzer Hara tries all different types of schemes to make a person sin. And after he makes the person do wrong, he comes up above, it says, and he prosecutes, he becomes a prosecuting angel. And he demands justice be done, that the person be punished for his deeds. Chazal say, the Yetzer Hara descends from above and misleads a person. And then he goes up and argues, and then he gets Hashem angry against the person. So the Rebbe asks a very basic question. And seemingly it's not understood. Why does it matter so much to the Yetzer Hara that the person should sin? To such a degree that he puts an effort in so many different types of schemes to be able to get a person to sin. The L'chura, seemingly top of page Yud Aleph, is because the Yetzer Hara hates the person. But in truth, this is not just out of hate. Sometimes people will do things that they do not derive any benefit whatsoever, just because of their terrible feelings they have towards another. They just want to destroy them, even though they derive no benefit from it. So the Rebbe says that's not the Yetzer Hara, even though hate is a motivating factor. But Elazel Gama Toivas Yetzer Hara Ba'atzmi. This is also for the benefit of the Yetzer Hara itself. Since through the sin, the Yetzer Hara can receive additional life force, that so it gains by it. When the person doesn't have Veda, it is energized by it. It's like saying, I'm stealing from somebody. Or person A steals from person B. Does he steal from person B because he hates them? Not necessarily. He's stealing from person B because now he's going to have the money that person A had, or person B had. Same thing, Yetzer Hara, by getting the person to do an Aveda, so he gets the energy of the person from Kedusha. The life force and vitality and energy of all matters comes from Kedusha. Kedusha is the source of all life, even in Klippus. Even Yetzer Hara and Klippus receive their life force and vitality from Kedusha. Their energy comes from Kedusha. But in general, even though this does not hold true for Klippa, in general, the means the vehicle, the method, how one can receive life force and energy from Kedusha, it needs to be through bit. Through bittul, a person or thing or a level can receive chayes from Kedusha. Like it says, Yiras Hashem l'chaim, that the fear of Hashem, the bittul of Hashem, that brings about, that ensures life, that ensures the vitality and energy of the chayes of Kedusha. So this also brings down, that's why malachim live longer than human beings, because malachim have greater bittul than human beings, therefore they get more chayes of Hashem. Now, the problem is, Klippos don't want to have bittul. So they need to find a different way to get chayes. Since Klippos do not want to be in the state of bittul, so they need to find an alternate channel to get the chayes. Therefore, they put in effort in all types of schemes that a person should do on a Veda. That's what the Chazal say, that the Yetzer Hara descends and misleads the person because he wants to get the chayes from the person. And afterwards he goes up and he prosecutes and he brings about the anger against the person. What does it mean? He goes up and he makes angry. He comes up Lamaila and he complains and he says, by the rule of law, by the system that they should put into place, now that chayes that was initially a portion for this person belongs to him, because now the person did an aveir. Any question before we go on to Ois Vav? Ois Vav, line 14, page Yudal. Via the Indian explanation of this, what the Klippos need to come on to the person to be able to get its chayes. In Yedua, it's known, Sheklolus, a Hefresh ben Kedusha l'Klippa, who the general difference between Kedusha and Klippa is, Shebekdusha yesh chayes atzmi. In Kedusha, there is an essential life force. There's a life force of the person's very essence. Masha Enkin HaKlippas ein lam chayes atzmi, as opposed to Klippas do not have a life force in and of themselves. They don't have their own life force and vitality. The kol chayusim u'mashim makalim ma'akdusha nemaisa chet, and their entire vitality comes that they receive from Kedusha through an Aveir. So now the Rebbe is going to ask a very simple thing. We just said before, everything gets chayes from Kedusha. Why you're saying that Klippos don't have chayes on its own and needs chayes from the person, and Kedusha has chayes on its own? Everything gets its chayes from Kedusha. How does this work? So he says in line 19, the idea behind this is the l'chura seemingly it's not understood. The geshem shaklipa ein l'chayis, just like Klippa does not have any independent life force. Umekabel chayus tumah kedusha, and receives its life force from holiness. Hadikainu gam kedusha, so too it's also in holiness. B'chol inyan seder ishtalshus, in all matters of the chain order of descent. They have no essential life force, and they receive from the light of Kedusha. Like it says in the Paschal Yod that we say out of Shabbos, and when you, meaning the life force of Kedusha, would leave, all the bodies all the names, meaning all the kelim of the Eibishter, will remain like a body without a soul. So therefore we see that everything, even in Kedusha itself, is dependent upon the chayes of Kedusha, not just Klippa. What's the difference between the way Kedusha receives chayes, let's say from the Oiris and from the Kav, and the way Klippa needs to take chayes from Kedusha? So he says in line 26, the idea behind this is though it's true that the general Seder Ishtalshlus from everywhere in Kedusha is only by Hashem's will. Hashem has to will it into being. Hashem has to constantly want it to exist. Like the Rambam writes and explaining the pasuk, that Hashem Elokim is truth. What does that mean? So the Rambam explains, He is the only one that's truth. No other truth is as true as his truth. Why is that so? Because all other things are dependent upon him. That's what the Torah says. Einoid Movadoi. What does it mean? Einoid Movadoi. The Rambam explains. Top of page at base. There's no other true existence except him, like him. What means a true existence? A true existence means something that exists independent of anything else. If it's dependent upon something else, it's not a true existence, because the only reason it's existing is because by the pleasure of the other thing. And if that other thing is not involved, so then it's not going to exist. Like the Rambam writes prior to this, who lived too long. One would not say, Chas v'sholom, that the Eibishter will cease if any of the creation cease, or if all the creation cease. He is independent of everything else. All existences need him. Without him, they wouldn't exist. And he does not need them. If they don't exist, it doesn't impact him whatsoever. So what does this mean? Using Chassidus terminology to explain the concept that the Rambam is putting forth. This means if the will of the creator will stop and cease, so then they will be total nothingness as they were before the creation. And what they said in Pascal, that when you leave from amongst them, all the names will remain like a body without a neshama. The fact that it says like will remain like a body without a neshama, it doesn't mean that they will totally cease. They will cease being alive, but they will still exist. This is indicated that at least a body will remain. So why are you telling me that all existences are entirely dependent upon the Eibishter, and if not for the Eibishter, it's complete nothingness? Seems to indicate otherwise. They would not be alive, but they would exist like a body without the neshama. So the Rebbe says we're talking different things. In the Paschal, we're talking about going back to what we said before. We're talking about the Hahun Neviu. We're talking about the Oirakav. Hareza Dafke Besiluk Oirakav. If the light of the Kav, which is where the Oiris come into the Kalim, would leave, so there would be no Oiris in the Kalim. So it would be like a body without a neshama. So the Kalim would be alone, standing alone without any chayes. That's not what we're talking about now. But if Hashem's will to make any existence come into being would cease, would leave, so then then there would be total nothingness as before the creation. If so, if that is the case, so Kiddusha is completely dependent upon the Eibishter, and Klippa is completely dependent upon the Eibishter. So why did you say earlier that Kiddusha is Chai b'Chayis Atzmi? Kiddusha lives like with its own life. Itself is alive. Whereas Klippa is something that is dependent upon the Kiddusha. Perhaps an analogy would be something that I mentioned before. I don't remember if it was for this idea. An analogy to be able to explain or answer this question is my body, let's say, is only alive when my neshama is inside of it. But once my neshama becomes one with my body, and now we become one entity called an Adam, my actual body is alive. It's not just I have a receptacle that contains my neshama. My hands, my feet, my face, my whole entire body is a living body. How about if I put a glove or clothing on my body? So the glove on my hand or clothing on my body, they may move in concert with my body, and they may do things that otherwise they would not do if my body was not in them. But my clothes are not alive now. They are not truly, essentially living things. My clothes are still dead things that are being animated by my body. In a similar vein, we will say the difference between, it's not an exact mashal, the difference between Kedusha getting its chayes from Hashem and the way Klippa gets its chayes from Hashem. Kedusha is a chayes atzmi. It's like my body that's alive. Whereas Klippa, it's only being animated by Kedusha, but it's not truly life. So he says in line 11, page Yud Aleph, the Kolmakim still in all, Yesh Hefresh ben Kedusha leKlippa. There's a difference between Kedusha and Klippa. The Bechol say that Ishtalshos the Kedusha, the entire chain order of descent of Kedusha, Ein Bechinas HaOyres, whether we're talking about the Oyres that are in the Slavish and the Kelim. Vehein Bechinas HaKelim, whether we're talking about the vessels. Vehein HaNeshamish, and Nisavim Oyres VaKelim, and whether we're talking about the Neshamas that came into being and were created via and because of the Oyres and Kelim. They are all Kedusha. The Oyres are Kedusha, Kelim is Kedusha, and the Neshamas that came out of the Oyres and Kelim are Kedusha. In the Kiyumam, who became Atzim, their existence is an existence of their very essence. Like it's known in the explaining what it says. In the Avening, it says Aloshin, who Kayam, he exists, Ushmoy Kayam, and his name exists, V'chisay Nachain, and his throne and is ready and set and so on. So Chassidus explains what are these three different Shehu Kayam Koyal Atzmos, that he exists is referring on Hashem's essence. Proteus Yoiser, more specifically, Ala Oir, it's referring to the light of the Eibishter. Ushmoy Kayam Koyal Kelim, and his name exists, that's referring to the Kelim, like we mentioned before, that the Gufais is called they're called Shmaham, they're called the names of the Eibishter, because the different names have to do with the different midas, as we know. The Kale has to do with Chesed, Alakim has to do with Gevura. So the names of the Eibishter have to do with the different Kale. The Chisay Koyal Neshamas Yisrael, and his throne that's referring to the Neshamas Yisrael, they're considered the throne of the Eibishter. Especially like the Chazal say, that the Neshamas of Tzadikim is called the throne of the Eibishter, just like, for example, the Avos is called Sholosh Regolim. They're like three legs of Hashem's throne. Regolim from the word legs also. Shekulam Kayamim B'Kiyum Atzmi. The word Kayam and Nachan all indicate that they exist with a Kiyum Atzmi because they are all Kedusha, as opposed to anything from Klippa, though they get their life force and vitality from Kedusha, but they don't exist B'Kiyum Atzmi. We'll stop over here. Any questions?